How are you planning for retirement?
We got a letter back through the post the other day, and it said when I'm 65, I'll get £500 back. But when I'm 65, £500 is going to mean nothing. That's going to be like, probably get a loaf of bread and a pint of milk for that.
10 years before I retire, so win the lottery, something like that.
Well, I haven't yet, but then I'm only 54, so I've still got a few years to go.
I think by the time it gets to our age being retired, there probably won't even be at retirement age the way that it's going.
What about yourself? How are you planning?
I've got a few pensions as well, yeah, definitely you have to, because the state government pension doesn't give you much and you can't live off of that, that's for sure.
And are you prepared for whatever the future holds? Talk to me about pensions and I usually glaze over. I'm Kim McAllister. This is Clever About Cash. When you're struggling to make ends meet week to week, it can be too much to think of the financial situation you'll be in 20 or 30 or 40 years down the line. But the sooner we start planning for the future, the easier it can be. So I've come for a coffee on Glasgow's Great Western Road with Gillian and Rebecca to hear about their situation and their attitude towards saving. Gillian, this cafe we're sitting in just now is your business. How does that fit into your kind of general plan? Have you thought about savings or, where you're going to go with this in the next 20, 30 years?
I think maybe because we spend so much time looking at spreadsheets and sort of intensely analysing our spending within the business, maybe as a sort of reaction to that, when I'm at home, I'm completely opposite and just so disinterested in my personal finances. Okay, I should have a budget, but that's so boring to have a budget and plan my meals and not just go to the local convenience shop and grab food every day. Mm-hmm. So it's just been, in the last 6 months, a really concerted effort to take the lessons of running a business into my personal spending and saving.
Excellent. Well, hopefully Eileen's got some tips for you later on.
Oh yeah, I have a lot to learn. I'd say I'm a rookie at the moment.
And Rebecca, you live on a beautiful farm. I suppose you'll probably want to keep the farm in the family and pass it on to your children. So have you thought about how you will take the value out for yourselves, or will you just work until you drop?
I don't think farmers generally retire. I don't see myself having a sort of retirement plan. I see myself just working up until, I suppose, I'm shattered. My parents-in-law, Anne and Duncan, they still are very much hands-on and they work full-time on the farm. So I think the generations, everyone just pulls together and it's like a family business.
That's really nice. And you're similar in that you have the family business with your sisters, Gillian. So how do you imagine, can you even think of retirement? Can you even think of not working at some stage?
Well, people were constantly asking us about our exit strategy in the early years of running the business, and we probably had no idea what that really meant. And I suppose more recently, in the last couple of years, we probably have realised we do need some kind of exit strategy, whether it is to sell the business or to be able to wind it down ultimately in a way that doesn't cost us money.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really difficult abstract thing to think about, because I've got young children as well, and you're just trying to get through the day, and then you have to try and think about what's going to happen when you're 70. It's sometimes it's a step too far, isn't it? But especially when it's your own business, I guess at some stage you're going to have to factor that in, that you can't work till you're 100. I always think I'll worry about my retirement when the time comes, but financial coach Eileen Adamson says we should all be making our plans now.
Retirement may seem far in the distance, or it may be looming more quickly than you'd ever imagined. Regardless of where you are in the path to retirement, you should be thinking about getting prepared for that time. With around half of people in the UK not saving at all, or not saving enough to fund the lifestyle they aspire to in retirement, it's important that you review your retirement situation. People are living longer, and many want an exciting and full retirement with plans for travel and adventure. However, a basic state pension is unlikely to allow this, so it's important to consider other options for retirement. If you want to have a comfortable retirement, you're advised to start thinking about it as soon as you start working. Now, with the introduction of auto-enrolment, it now means that all workplaces must automatically enrol each employee who earns above the national insurance threshold into a workplace pension scheme. A big benefit of this is that employers pay money into your pension too, and this, added to the tax relief from pension contributions, leads to extra money being paid into your pension. It's great that this is now happening, but the contribution rates may not be enough to fund the kind of retirement you wish. Join me later in the programme to find out specific actions that you should be taking in each decade to ensure that your retirement is well planned.
Eileen will be joining us for a coffee in just a little bit. Gillian and Rebecca, what about some of the unexpected expenses that come along, like if your car needs repaired or one of the children suddenly has a demand for a school trip or something? Do you set money aside for a rainy day, Rebecca?
The short, no.
Me neither.
It's going to be more interesting when they start high school and suddenly there's a hockey tour to, South Africa or something. Then I'll be like, oh my goodness, right. But I'm hoping my business will have grown a little bit more by then. So, there'll be more. I think maybe this is a message I should start putting money aside for these big school trips.
Well, sometimes we need to be reminded, don't we? Like I say, you're just working day to day and then these things come up. What about you? Have you got any kind of rainy day fund or secret stash?
I've started being a bit more disciplined in the last 6 months, and I actually did create a budget. So I built into the budget the need to save for if we want to go on a holiday, saving for Christmas, car repairs, which I've never done before. So it would always just be, okay, this has happened to the car and it's going to cost £500. Where's that going to come from? Or, okay, we can't go on a holiday this year because all the money's been spent on repairing the car.
It's a horrible decision to have to make, isn't it? Ugh. Yeah, there should be fun money and then boring money, I think. Richard Forbes has been looking at another big expense we should all be saving for.
Here's a puzzle for you. See if you can guess what I'm talking about. We're all going to need one of these sooner or later. You've usually got many years to save for it, but it's something most of us don't start thinking about till pretty late in the day. If I tell you I'm recording this at Tom Nahurich Cemetery in Inverness, you'll probably realise I'm talking about a funeral. Sarah McLean from John Fraser & Son Funeral Directors is keeping me company. Sarah, how much does a funeral cost these days?
I think locally we might say an average, maybe people are spending about £4,000, maybe £4,500. But if people are looking to have a really simple cremation, say they'll be spending a lot less, and other people might have quite elaborate wishes, so they might want to spend more.
4,000, that can be a lot of money to find out at once. You offer these prepaid funeral plans. What do they involve?
A prepaid plan is a way to list your wishes, but also to pay for those wishes in advance. So it doesn't work like one of these insurance policies whereby you're paying and you're paying and you're paying with no end in sight. It means that you can actually secure services rather than just being promised a sort of monetary amount at the end of it. We've seen too many people spend years and years paying into insurance policies and paying out a lot more than they ever get back, or being promised maybe an amount of £3,000 that at the time would have been quite a lot of money, and now they're realising that that's not going to be able to cover the cost of their wishes.
I'm 43, I've not given any thought to my funeral yet. At what age should we start planning for our funerals?
We are seeing increasingly that younger people are coming to us, people in their 30s and their 40s, and it means that they're perhaps setting that up instead of a life insurance, but they're only going to be paying it over maybe 5 years or 10 years rather than indefinitely.
How much would I be looking at putting away each month?
It's going to be determined by how long you want to pay that over. I see some people wanting to really spread that cost, so we might be able to set up a plan for £20, £25 a month. Other people would prefer just to have it done. So they might choose to pay over 12 months. They might be paying, a few £100 per month. But it's all set up really flexibly so people can change their wishes. They can change the payment terms, and it's comfortable for them to do that.
And that would be for my own funeral. Could I take out a plan to cover one of my parents' funerals?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's maybe becoming the most common story for people approaching us for a prepaid plan. As people do become aware that they are going to be responsible for paying somebody's funeral, they do come to us for advice. So if you are that person who's going to be responsible, you do have the permission of the person who's going to benefit from the prepaid plan, as it were. then you can set that up.
Finally, for those of us who haven't set money aside and can't afford to pay for our own funeral at the end of the day, what happens?
There is a process by which if somebody does pass away with no funds and nobody responsible or willing to make the arrangements on their behalf, that the local council would be instructed to organise a very simple funeral. In these circumstances, the focus is on safe disposal rather than ceremony, and that's provided under an environmental health contract. At one point, I suppose they would have been referred to as paupers' funerals, although now, rather than unmarked graves, the committals tend to always be cremation.
Gillian and Rebecca, has either of you started a funeral plan?
No.
Isn't that frightening to think of that? Well, apparently we should be. So throughout the series, we've been hearing about Scottish companies that have developed websites and apps to help us manage our money. There's one for a happy retirement, and the man behind it, Kevin Hollister, has come in for a coffee. Hi, Kevin.
Hi there. Hi.
Can you tell us a bit about your website?
The pensions freedoms were introduced in April 2015, and these freedoms are great and they've proved really popular with individuals, but there's been a recognition throughout the industry that a lot of individuals aren't seeking advice before retirement in how to build up those pots and in retirement and how to draw those pots down. So when individuals get to retirement, it's not just these pension pots that they're going to have built up that they're going to use to fund their retirement. Virtually everybody gets a state pension. Lots of people have got elements of old final salary pensions, and as well they may have some lump sums. So at the moment it's very difficult for individuals without taking advice to look at, well, how do I put everything that I've got together to give me the income that I want in retirement? When you look at actually some of the statistics, half of people are just cashing in their pots completely at retirement, which is never really a good idea. They're paying a lot in tax, and then they may just be putting what they take out into a bank account and effectively using that to fund their retirement. So it's not like they're spending that and paying down debts and so forth. But of those people that go into drawdown, around 40% don't take any advice at all. So they have no plan as to how to draw down their pots. They may well pay too much in tax when they start to take it. But the key worry is that they run out of money, really, before the end of their lifetime. The aim behind Guide was to look at, well, what elements of that problem can we solve for people?
So if I went onto your website right now, what would I have to do? What information would I have to give you?
We don't actually ask for any personal information at all. I don't need to know your name to work out how to provide your pension or a plan for your pension over your lifetime. So in terms of the information, it's really quite minimal. We obviously ask for your date of birth, and we ask if you're male and female. Females have the benefit of living longer than males, so we need to know that. And we ask about what you would like in retirement. That's what you want. You put in what you have. So your state pension comes in automatically. We have an estimate of that. And then you can put in whatever pots you've got, so these defined contribution pots that you've built up. You put in any final salary schemes that you have, any lump sums, etc., etc. So you put in all of that information. Again, we don't ask for where you currently have those arrangements with. All we need to know is the numbers to effectively build you that plan.
Okay.
We then give an estimate of your life expectancy, and we look at, is the plan feasible? So can you put everything that you have together to give you what you want in retirement? And if the answer is no, there's only three ways that you can really solve that. One is to retire later, one is to take less in retirement, and the third one is to pay more in. You can go back in over time. You don't have to fill out all the information that you have before, but you just fill out the few variables. So what are my pension pots now? What are my savings pots now? Compared to last year when I looked at this, does everything still expect to work?
Do I need to put more into my pension, which is probably the question I'll need to answer. So what's the name of the website again?
It's called Guide, with two I's.co.uk.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Kevin, I'll just get you to swap seats with our financial coach, Eileen Adamson. Earlier we heard how Gillian and Rebecca are putting all the profits back into their businesses, but they would like to know more about planning for the future. So what else could they be doing?
It's absolutely wonderful to hear about your developing businesses. I have got my own business as well, and I just love business. What took me into that was I'm also a teacher, and I looked at my pension and discovered that my pension was going to give me £6,000 a year when I retired at 67. So that to me then seemed to be a bit scary.
I then looked into it and discovered that the state pension would give me about another £8,500, £9,000. And I thought, well, for my plans, I want to be travelling the world. I want to retire early. I want to retire from teaching at 55. And I want to then get a camper van and go travelling around Europe for a year with my husband. So I reckoned that the income from my pension wasn't going to provide for me. I spent a couple of years going, oh, well, that's it. I'm going to have to work till I'm 68. I'm just going to have to be there in the classroom. And then went, no, come on, think about this. What can you do? So I started my business, which will hopefully help me to have an income as well as my pension. So I still can retire at 55 from teaching. What's your dreams for retirement, Gillian?
My plans probably don't match up with the reality of my financial planning at the moment, in that in my dreams it's going to be all about travelling and camper vans, and because my parents at the moment help me with a lot of childcare, I'm kind of aware that we might have this window of 10 years when our kids are all off at uni before they start having children of their own that I'll then be really involved with. So I'm like, we need to maximise this 10 years. That's not going to be cheap. So I'm not quite sure where I think I'm going to get the funds to do that. So that's probably where I need advice.
That's quite a common scenario for a lot of people. I think a lot of people kind of at our age are thinking about wanting to travel and wanting to spend time in retirement doing things that we don't get time to do just now. So it is really important in planning for the future. It kind of starts now, even though we might not like to think about it, because we've got so many other pressures on us. I've got 3 children as well, and I know how expensive it is having children, but it is really important. And a great way of doing that is there's kind of 3 steps that I think all families should be taking early on. And I think one is, which we've already touched on, is having an emergency fund. So I think all families should be aiming to become financially resilient. And one way of doing that is by having a £1,000 emergency fund that can cover most things that are going to happen to you. The second step I would see as being paying off any kind of credit card debt, store card debt, things like that. Get it paid off as quickly as you possibly can. The third step would be to then create an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, which then just allows your family to feel safe, to feel secure, and that you can cope with any eventuality that life throws at you. From then on, what I think families should be doing is sit down and do a planning timeline of the big financial events that you think are going to take place in your life in the future. So right from now, right through to retirement. So it might be buying a new house, it might be investing more in the business, it might be thinking about children going on to further education and thinking about maybe starting a fund to help them out, or maybe thinking about buying a property to help them out. And then also thinking about big holidays. If you've want to travel with the children, that might be something that's worth planning in. So it's sitting down and having a look at a financial timeline over the whole period from now until retirement.
I feel I want to go home this afternoon and open up my online banking and like itemise, have a Disney account. I'd love to take the kids to Disneyland. You know, my eldest is 9, my youngest is just about to turn 4. So before we miss that opportunity, so I feel I need to itemise like a Christmas account, a retirement account, a holiday. You know, I just feel like, how many accounts can you open?
So other ways of planning to fund your retirement could be working longer into your retirement, which you're talking about doing, Rebecca. A lot of people maybe leave a kind of stressful job and take on a small part-time job that reduces the stress levels, but that you can continue to work, because we are all living longer, and there's nothing to say that at the age of 68 that we want to stop work completely. But some form of prior planning actually helps to give you options and give you choices. What I don't think we want to be doing is just blindly ignoring it and then having to work until we're 68. I think it's far better to do some form of planning and to have a diverse income and be able to make choices at that age rather than being forced to continue to work. Another thing that we should all be doing is getting a state pension forecast, because we won't all get a full state pension, but it's important that you look at your provision now and get a state pension forecast to see roughly how much you're forecast to get.
How would I get that?
You go to the government website, just type in state pension forecast, and it'll be the first thing that comes up.
Brilliant. Pension planning can be a complicated business, but financial advisor Phil Anderson has been keeping things simple for Richard.
Pensions are great for when you come to retire. By paying money into a pension, that gives you money that you can use once you stop working to then enhance your standard of living at that point in retirement.
And how much should we be paying into our pensions?
I know when I speak to different people, they suggest different amounts. At the moment, we've got what's called auto-enrolment. So anyone that's employed would now be in a workplace pension scheme. The limits for that are that the employee pays in 5% and their employer pays in 3%. They also get tax relief on that as well. So that's the kind of contributions with the workplace pensions. If someone's self-employed, then they've got to make their own provision. So again, it's got to be an amount that's affordable to someone. That's one of the key things for pensions. But that's where a good financial planner will sit down with someone and say, right, what are your kind of goals and aspirations from the future, and how much money are you going to need at that point once you stop working?
Percentage-wise, what's the most realistically of your salary that you'd put in each month?
In the past, people used to always think of like really good pensions being maybe like the police pension, fire brigade pension, and the reason that they were good is that they were well funded. The government were paying into them, but also the employees were paying into them as well. Generally with that, it could be anything up to about 15% of someone's salary going into a pension. But I think for most people, the limits more of the workplace pensions would tend to be more suitable for most people.
And should you consider a private pension on top of that if you've already got one through your work?
It's definitely something to consider. One of the good things with pensions is that you get tax relief on it. For a basic rate taxpayer, if you pay £100 into a pension, you get £25 added to it straight away. So that's one of the major benefits. But good financial planning can also be looking at things. For example, if someone earns over £50,000 a year, and they have children, they start to lose their child benefit. But by making a contribution into the pension, that can reduce their earnings down, which can actually mean that they can start to get their child benefit back.
Is it ever too early or too late to start your pension?
Not at all. When you say too early, I've seen in the past grandparents starting a pension for their young grandchildren. And likewise, now with the pension freedoms that came in a few years back, someone, even if they have no pension provision, they can pay money into a pension, get the tax relief on it, and then at some point they can then draw the money back out of the pension. There was what's called pension freedoms came out a couple of years back, and when that came in, that basically means that your pension pot is a lot more accessible once you do get past the age of 55. So I would say it's never too early and never too late to be looking at your retirement plans.
Now, you'd think as we get older, our chances of being the target of a financial scam would increase, but actually, it's millennials who are more likely to lose their money to the fraudsters. Nina Ballantyne from Citizens Advice Scotland has some top tips for spotting a scam.
There are a few things to look out for. The most obvious is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. On top of that, we know that reputable organisations won't ever phone out the blue. They won't come to your doorstep out the blue and pressure you to move money anywhere or to pay for anything up front. If you're at all unsure about a situation, the best thing to do is to take a moment, seek advice from ourselves at your local Citizen Advice Bureau or online, or a trusted friend or family member. No one should be pushing you to make a decision that involves any of your finances quickly. If you have been scammed or think you might have been the target of a scam, the best thing to do is report it to Police Scotland or come for advice at your local Citizens Advice Bureau. It's never too late to check if you can get some of your money back, and the best way that you can prevent the fraudsters is to make sure that other people know what to look out for. So some of the scams that we see through our network are quite diverse actually, and they can be targeted at anyone, any circumstance, any time in life. And they range from everything from being contacted through Instagram by a supposed lottery winner, through to being cold called at your home by someone pretending to be from a reputable organisation. You can be doorstepped by somebody offering to do work on your home or garden. And there are also very, very sophisticated scams where people will claim to be from your bank. And these ones have been particularly hard for some people to spot, but we know that banks will never phone out of the blue to make you transfer money or make you harried and worried about your circumstances. If you think that you might have been scammed, the most important thing is not to feel embarrassed. In Scotland, we have a culture where we don't like to talk about money particularly, and it's easy to feel that you've been duped or taken advantage of in some way, but these are some of the most sophisticated criminals out there, and it's a crime like any other. If somebody took 100 quid out your pocket in the street, you wouldn't think twice about reporting that to the police. A scam is no different.
After everything that you've heard from Eileen and from what we've chatted about, what's your first step going to be?
The first step is to open up my online banking and just have little pots. So have like my everyday, which is like my food, the kids' activities, have on my online banking, obviously have the 3 kids' savings accounts, and then have like a Christmas account, a holiday account, and then your future. So no, I'm really quite excited. Can you say you're excited about organising?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
It's about there. Yeah.
Well, I want to go home and do my life timeline, as you suggested, where you work back and factor in, okay, at what age am I wanting to do this campervan trip, and when are we wanting to go to Disney, and give me more of a sort of a visual prompt as to when I will need to have saved for all of these things. Because as you said, I think not planning for it is a good way to make sure that it never happens.
Correct.
Perfect summary. Next time on Clever About Cash, we'll be hearing how small changes around the home can lead to big savings. But before we go, Eileen has some homework for us.
Today's homework is to consider the actions you should take in each decade leading up to your retirement age. In all decades, it's important to try to reduce any debts, including a mortgage, so that the amount of money you require to live on is reduced. Living on less each month allows you to put more towards your retirement, but it also means that you can retire early because you need less to live on. So in your 20s, you should think about paying off any debts, start saving for retirement, think about pensions, a lifetime ISA and investing in stocks and shares. In your 30s, you should review your income and expenses, continue saving for retirement and check that your chosen options are working well. In your 40s, if you haven't already started saving, then start now. Work out how much you need to fund the lifestyle you want and think about putting a proportion of any pay rises towards your retirement. In your 50s, it's important to review your funds to ensure that it's enough for your retirement age and think about increasing your contributions if necessary. You might also want to seek advice to ensure that you're on track. In your 60s, it's about check that any debts, including any remaining mortgages, are in order. Set your retirement date, consider your options carefully and seek advice to ensure that you're making good decisions. Free, unbiased and easy to understand information can be accessed from the Pensions Advisory Service.
I'm Kim McAllister. You've been listening to